Good evening. It's January 3rd. Thanks for joining us. I'm Priya Sridhar. President Trump authorizes an airstrike against Qasem Soleimani, Iran's top general. But in the aftermath of the attack, the U.S. is telling Americans to leave Iraq, and other world leaders are calling for de-escalation. Camilla Bernal breaks down the latest.
Escalating tensions in the Middle East and in the U.S. after the targeted killing of Iran's top security and intelligence commander.
We took action last night to stop a war. We did not take action to start a war.
President Donald Trump ordered the airstrike that killed Qasem Soleimani and an Iraqi leader.
Soleimani was plotting imminent and sinister attacks on American diplomats and military personnel, but we caught him in the act and terminated him.
On Capitol Hill, lawmakers agreeing on what Soleimani did, but reacting along party lines.
The president's decision may add to an already dangerous and difficult situation in the Middle East.
No man alive was more directly responsible for the deaths of more American service members than Qasem Soleimani.
But in Iran, Soleimani was seen as a national hero, and officials vowing revenge, saying, quote, America will not find an easy escape from being held to account for this miscalculation. The U.S. will now deploy thousands of additional troops to the Middle East.
And I am ready and prepared to take whatever action is necessary. And that in particular refers to Iran.
In Washington, I'm Camilla Bernal reporting.
The U.S. can expect more uncertainty after killing a top Iranian general. As KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh explains, a lack of good options has dominated U.S. military policy since invading Iraq.
President Trump's stated goal has been to pull the U.S. out of conflicts in the Middle East. A day after a U.S. drone strike killed General Qasem Soleimani at the Baghdad airport, 3,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division were touching down in Kuwait, preparing to head into Iraq. Eric Gartsky is the director of the Center for Peace and Security Studies at the University of California, San Diego. He says those troop interventions can become a target.
And we've already discovered that those are costly, they're fruitless, they lead to the deaths of Americans without major foreign policy achievements.
That troop surge may be temporary, though the U.S. remains stuck between staying or leaving Iraq.
If you don't want to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room anymore, then you're not going to call the shots. You can influence the process if you do it skillfully, but you can't be the decider anymore.
U.S. installations are on alert around the world. Gartsky says Iran will almost certainly retaliate. He doesn't believe the conflict will necessarily explode into combat against superior U.S. forces, especially if the Iranians believe the U.S. is slowly on its way out of Iraq. In the meantime, Marines from Southern California have been part of an air-ground task force which is fortifying the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Marines from Pendleton, 29 Palms, and Miramar have been flowing into Iraq from Kuwait since earlier this week. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
And San Diego has a large Middle Eastern community, and tonight locals are responding to the airstrike. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman is here now with their reaction. Matt?
Yeah, Priya, this conflict involves Iranians and Iraqis. Today we went out and talked to people from both countries. In El Cajon, we caught up with a group of Iraqis who are gathering to mark the occasion of Iran's General Qasem Soleimani's death. As you take a look at this video here, while some said deaths shouldn't be celebrated, others say they were very happy Soleimani was killed. They say he has killed people all over the Middle East, including in Iraq. They say he was like the Secretary of Defense for Iran, a very high-ranking position. Now, many Iraqis I talked to are thanking President Trump for ordering this airstrike that killed him. Now, even though Soleimani's death may come as good news to many Iraqis, they fear retaliation for their friends and family members.
There are a lot of mixed feelings over there. And I know any kind of military interference, there are going to be a lot of killings, whether it's towards the American troops or towards Iraqi civilians. Right. So for me, war or let's say any kind of interference is not really the answer. I think right now the Iraqi government has to step up. And of course, that's what we were trying to achieve for a couple of months. And so we need them to step up, saying we have no role, we don't have any kind of interference between you and Iran. If the U.S. wants any kind of doings with Iran, you have to do it between yourselves, not on our land.
Yeah, now the U.S. is sending thousands of more troops to Iraq, which borders Iran. Now, Iraqis we talked to feared that a conflict could take place on their soil, where the closest U.S. military outposts are. Meantime, we also talked to a number of Iranians, but none of them wanted to go on camera. Many feared some sort of retaliation when they returned to Iran to visit family. The Iranian people I did have a chance to speak with, some said General Soleimani was a bad guy, that he was evil and killed many people. Others said that, that they liked him in Iran because he was so powerful in that region. Now, regarding war tensions with the U.S., people we talked to said all the pressure is on the Iranian and Iraqi people, not the U.S. Both groups I spoke to said that if a conflict were to break out, it would likely happen on Iraqi soil. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Thanks, Matt, for that report. And the deadly U.S. airstrike in Iraq is also impacting oil prices. Futures for Brent crude, a global benchmark, jumped 4.3% to more than $60 per barrel today. U.S. oil futures gained 4.1%, reaching $63.69 per barrel. Both are on track for their biggest daily gains in about a month. The regime of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has released new propaganda amid rising tensions with the U.S. The dictator also indicates that his country could soon resume testing nuclear weapons. CNN's Brian Todd reports.
The new year brings bold strokes of bravado from North Korea's supreme leader, as his propaganda arm releases new video of a recent visit Kim Jong-un made to the revered Mount Paektu on a white stallion, complete with sound effects of the horse's gallop. The dictator brashly declares that his country will no longer be bound by his self-declared halt to the testing of his nuclear bombs and long-range missiles. As the world sees fresh video of Kim's officers standing in the water, then Kim posing with his wife, Ri Sol-ju, in a snow-banked stream, we also get an ominous new warning from the despot. The world will witness a new strategic weapon to be possessed by the DPRK in the near future. What kind of weapon could that be?
Many of us are expecting some kind of ICBM launch, whether it's an existing missile that they have or a variant or perhaps even a new ICBM like solid fuel. They could do additional submarine launches. They could do land-based medium range. They could do intermediate range missiles. They could, with an ICBM, finally demonstrate that they have a re-entry vehicle capability that would protect a warhead as it comes back into the Earth's atmosphere.
Despite the cheerful propaganda of Kim emerging from a photo op on Mount Paektu with soldiers frantically applauding, analysts say the young leader is likely frustrated tonight that his nuclear diplomacy with President Trump has not paid off for him.
There has been no lifting of sanctions. There has been no progress on ending the Korean War. And there's been no progress in having regular diplomatic negotiations without it being cut short. And so, frankly, Kim Jong-un doesn't have much to show for it right now.
Venting that frustration, Kim's regime imposed a deadline for more progress toward a nuclear weapons deal with the U.S. to be made by the end of 2019, or else. The regime threatened a so-called Christmas gift to America, which many experts believed would be the testing of a long-range missile. That hasn't come yet. And even with his latest New Year's threats, analysts point out Kim did not say he's walking away from diplomacy with President Trump.
What Kim Jong-un has done by signaling assertiveness and aggressiveness, but also leaving the door for diplomacy, is to say, look, we want to negotiate as much as you guys do.
And the president, even as Kim's latest threats were trickling in from Pyongyang, said he's still banking on his personal relationship with Kim.
He likes me, I like him, we get along. I think he's a man of his word, so we're going to find out, but I think he's a man of his word.
But some believe if Kim tests a long-range missile soon, Trump and his team should no longer be so accommodating.
The U.S. should stop our own self-imposed constraints on military exercises. We've canceled at least 13 exercises. That's degraded U.S. deterrence and defense capabilities.
Analysts say if Kim Jong-un tests a long-range missile soon, a big challenge for Trump is going to be getting tough with Kim without overreacting. Australia has been ravaged by bushfires. New South Wales has declared a state of emergency. There have been more than a dozen deaths, and the air in places is toxic. Anna Corin has more.
This is what a mass evacuation looks like. Thousands and thousands fleeing the areas worst hit by the deadly bushfires that have swept across the southeastern coast of Australia. A mandatory evacuation for tourists before catastrophic conditions return on Saturday. But some want to head the opposite way.
My daughter's stuck down in Sussex with some friends down there.
Trevor Garland's 16-year-old daughter Hayley is stranded in one of the hardest hit regions with some friends. She told him she's safe, but he's not taking any chances.
Been here for quite a while trying to see if I can get down there to get her out. But I'm a bit worried because it's one road in, one road out.
It's dangerous, but Trevor is not alone.
So at the moment we're just focused on trying to get the family back together.
Xanthia Walsh and her family were away when fire struck the family home in Conjola, 3 hours south of Sydney. They all escaped unharmed, but their house was completely destroyed.
It was a family effort to build the house, so it's hit a lot of people quite hard. It used to be a holiday house prior to us living in it, so all of our families stayed in there at some point or another.
Walsh and Garland are but two of the many stuck around and inside some of the areas hardest hit by bushfires across the states of Victoria and New South Wales. Dozens of roads have been cut off and some communities remain isolated. Stranded residents dependent on the Australian military for the most basic of supplies. It's part of the Australian government's efforts to deal with the crisis, but for some it's too little too late. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, who has been heavily criticised for his lack of leadership during this crisis and his government's inaction on climate change, was heckled by residents during a visit to Cobargo.
You won't be getting any votes down here, buddy.
A large part of the town was destroyed during the New Year's Eve bushfires, and residents say the government has not done enough.
This is not fair. We are totally forgotten about down here.
The Prime Minister left without responding. Conditions have improved slightly in the past few days, allowing the countless men and women who continue to battle the flames a temporary but very limited reprieve, and just enough time to say goodbye to one of their own. Firefighter Jeffrey Keaton was honoured for his bravery at his funeral, the medal given to his young son. Just one of the many victims of a nightmare with no end in sight that is expected to worsen in the coming days. Anna Corrin, CNN, Nowra, Australia.
Just days into the new year, there has already been another horse fatality at Santa Anita Park. The 4-year-old horse was injured during a race Wednesday and became the first horse this year to die at the famed racetrack. Park officials said the animal was hurt in a possible collision with another horse. Last week, veterinarians decided to euthanize a horse that was injured on the training track. Nearly 40 horses have died at the track since December of 2018. Racing was briefly halted last year. Since reopening, Santa Anita has made safety changes, including restricting steroids, anti-inflammatory drugs, and race day medications. Flu season is far from over, and already there have been more than 2.5 million cases of the illness and 1,300 deaths, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It's also been a record-breaking deadly flu season for children. Mandy Gaither has tips to keep you healthy.
It can last as late as May, and the flu season is already wreaking havoc on the health of millions. The first line of defense is well known, washing hands. But beyond that, Atlanta's Northside Hospital says 5 things can help keep the flu away. First, get plenty of Z's. Having healthy sleep patterns helps your immune system stay strong. Soothe stress, easier said than done, but experts say it's crucial to your health. Stress makes bodies more susceptible to illnesses like the flu. Get more from your food. Healthy eating helps boost your immune system. Soak up some sunshine. Colder temperatures keep most of us indoors, but you could be missing out on vital vitamin D. It helps decrease inflammation and helps the body's natural defenses. Finally, keep up the pace. Exercise is essential for immune health. 20 to 30 minutes several times a week can do wonders for your health. For today's Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
More San Diegans are going to the emergency room with the flu than at any point last year. But KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento says they aren't so sick that they have to be admitted.
The region's emergency rooms are seeing more people with the flu. A county report this week showed 8% of these patients had influenza-like symptoms. The highest last season was 6%. And we still have months to go in this flu season. But the county's Dr. Eric McDonald says not as many of the ER patients this year require further treatment.
Probably less than 10% are being admitted to the hospital, which is a little less than would otherwise be expected.
He says that's likely because the dominant dominant strain seen this year is Influenza B, which often affects a certain population.
It makes younger people sick, but they don't tend to be as likely to be hospitalized or to die from it.
Of the 10 San Diegans who have died from the flu this season, most were elderly. The youngest was 59 years old. 4 tested positive for Influenza B, and all had underlying medical conditions. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, at the direction of the president, the U.S. kills one of Iran's top military leaders, escalating tensions to a new level. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here with me to discuss the top business stories of this week is Miro Kopik, a lecturer in marketing at SDSU and co-founder of Bottom Line Marketing. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Priya. Happy New Year.
Thanks, same to you. Well, let's dive right in there. I wanted to talk to you first about holiday spending. I see that sales were up 3% over 2018. What's behind that strong turnout?
Well, this year we had 6 fewer shopping days because Thanksgiving was so late. So retailers experienced 3.4% increase in spending by consumers because consumers were confident. There was low unemployment. The stock market was strong. So consumers were a little bit bullish, a little bit below expectations, quite frankly. But where consumers really spent this year was on apparel, on jewelry, on electronics, and appliances and home furnishings. That was the big thing that drove spending. Now, the other thing that drove spending was a big increase in online sales. So much more than retail, than traditional retail. So 18% growth in online sales. But important to note that online sales still only represented 14.5% of all spending. That means 85% of spending was done in a store, probably in a mall. We're kind of staying tuned for 2020 and seeing what the retail activity is going to bring us.
Yeah, it's certainly a changing landscape when it comes to holiday shopping. I want to move on now to the minimum wage. We just saw the minimum wage increase that was effective January 1st of this year here in California. I actually got a chance to speak to many local businesses about their reaction to the minimum wage. Some of the restaurants I spoke to said that, they're giving their workers a better quality of life by, increasing their wage, while others said that, they might have to cut jobs now. What do you think the impact's going to be on the local economy here in San Diego?
I think because we're a high-cost state, the dollar increase is not going to impact across the board. What's very important is that the state of California increased it to $13 an hour, same with the city of San Diego. Now, what's interesting is that this minimum wage increase is affecting 2.6 million Californians. That's 9% of the adult population. This doesn't include people who work for private companies like Costco or Amazon that have already increased their wages to $15 an hour. This is an important thing in terms of a living wage concept because the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. And what we've seen in the last couple of years is that there's been real wage growth. This is the first real wage growth that we've seen since the beginning of the century, since 2000, 2001. So this real wage growth in San Diego, for example, real wages have gone up 30% since 2016 at a gross level. If you factor out inflation, that means these people at the minimum wage are actually increasing their real wages by 5%. This helps offset rent increases. This helps offset gas price increases. So it lets families stay ahead of the game as opposed to falling behind, which they did for pretty much the last 15 years. So that's an important movement, and I think businesses are going to be fine. Some restaurants might have a problem because they don't want to increase prices, but they're putting on a surcharge, which consumers then can decide they understand and they're willing to help.
And it's impossible to talk about the economy and the big stories of this year without talking about home prices and home construction. We saw home construction drop over the last 2 years despite a strong economy. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think large part of it is builders, I think, are still somewhat cautious based on the last recession. What they're seeing is the cost of construction materials has gone up considerably because of the high cost living in San Diego, and the median home price has gone up to $594,000. This means that an average family has to earn over $140,000 to qualify for a home loan. They're concerned, even with a robust economy, that they're not going to be able to sell those houses at those prices. The state has a mandate that we have to build 108,000 new housing units to meet growth targets alone. And certain local real estate experts say that we have to actually build close to 130,000 units. So what the city has done is they've updated the community plans to really be able to identify over 75,000 new potential housing units. So if builders want to take advantage of that, they can, and hopefully there won't be a lot of opposition by neighborhood residents, so these builders can do their job.
Right, 108,000 by 2029 is the state mandate.
Correct.
Well, Miro Kopik, thank you so much for your analysis. As always, we appreciate it.
Thanks, Priya.
With mortgage rates at low levels, many Americans may be considering a new house. But how can you make sure you're choosing the right house for you? Rocket Mortgage recently outlined some of the steps you'll want to take and questions you'll want to ask to help make sure the house you buy is the house you want. For one, spend some time scouting neighborhoods. You're going to want to get a sense of what it's like to live there. Ultimately, this may be a gut call. You'll either have a good feeling for the surrounding neighborhood or a not so good feeling. And think ahead. Envision how your lifestyle will fit in the house. If you plan to entertain a lot, you'll want to make sure the house has the necessary space. Have pets? If so, think about how they'll fit in the new place. If you like to cook, how is the kitchen set up? Does it meet your needs? Take the time when touring a house to envision how all the rooms will work for you, your family, and your needs and tastes. Then pick a good home inspector. They're going to be a valuable resource for you. A thorough inspection can turn up red flags on everything from plumbing and heating issues to problems with mold or even the foundation or roof. For more on house hunting tips, you can check out the full piece at Rocket Mortgage on usatoday.com.
Well, it's beautiful out there and even a little warmer. Let's get your weekend forecast from meteorologist Lauren Rainson.
Good evening to you and TGIF. Our weather headlines featuring morning patchy fog that'll give way to abundant afternoon sunshine. Temperature certainly very nice for this time of year. We've certainly trended much quieter compared to recent days. Northwest weather, though, that's going to be a different story. But for us in Southern California, we are smooth sailing from here on out. Just heads up if your plans take you to the coast. We are in that high surf advisory until 8 o'clock this evening. At times, expect those waves up to 8 feet high. The seas are definitely very choppy, very rough surf out there. But weather-wise, again, you're mostly clear. You're quiet tonight. Lows in the upper 40s in the metro. Widespread lows, lower to the upper 40s. Some places like Ramona will dip to the upper 30s. We got a break free of those morning clouds in areas of coastal patchy fog. We're going to do so in a hurry, getting back to a lot of that afternoon sun. A few more clouds will build in, especially along the coastal areas once more into Saturday and Sunday mornings. High pressure is in control throughout the weekend. It will be a little bit on the breezy side at times, but overall, nothing that major. I am expecting a northwesterly wind anywhere from 5 to 15 miles per hour. But with high pressure firmly intact, that's keeping our conditions sun-filled, nice and enjoyable. Here's our travel forecast for you in case you or anybody you know will be heading through other parts of the country. Well, we're keeping that forecast on the mild, uneventful side. Eastern two-thirds of the country, that's where Mother Nature's wrapping up on that more active weather pattern. Here's your extended outlook along the coast, filled with sunshine, temperatures in the 60s through the weekend. A little warmer Monday, lower 70s. Take it further inland where sunshine is also prevailing, highs in the lower to the middle 70s. In the mountains, sunshine with highs in the 50s, a little bit on the cooler side Monday, lower 50s. Temperatures will dip to the upper 40s toward the middle of next week. We'll leave you in the desert where sunshine is also dominating, temperatures in the 70s all weekend long. Expect those temps to dip a degree or two into early next week with highs in the upper 60s. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Lauren Rainson. Back to you.
Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker has dominated the box office since its release last month. How much has the movie made so far? Well, Rick Damigella has the numbers and more in our Hollywood Minute.
Feeling. The Force brought us together.
The Force is strong with this one. Variety reports Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker has zoomed past the $400 million mark at the North American box office. Combined with its overseas haul, the 9th movie in the Skywalker saga has made an estimated $815 million at the global box office. Award season news, shorts go big. Cable and streaming service Shorts TV announces the 2020 Oscar-nominated short films will be screened in theaters. The as-yet unannounced Oscar-nominated short films will debut in select markets on January 29th, with screenings nationwide starting January 31st.
Tell me the fairy tale again.
It's too scary, start seeing things that aren't there.
Here's a sneak peek at the upcoming horror yarn Gretel and Hansel. The latest adaptation of the Brothers Grimm fairy tale finds It Chapter 2 actress Sophia Lillis as Gretel, who runs afoul of a witch while walking in the woods. Alice Krieg plays the witch, while newcomer Sam Leakey plays Hansel. Gretel and Hansel scares its way into theaters January 31st. In Hollywood, I'm Rick Damagella.
The Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival 2020 lineup is announced. Rage Against the Machine will headline Friday nights, Travis Scott on Saturdays, and Frank Ocean on Sundays during the 2-week festival. Others scheduled to appear include Calvin Harris, Louis Capaldi, Flume, and Lana Del Rey. Coachella takes place in Indio, California on April 10th through the 12th and the 17th through the 19th. Pre-sale tickets are available Monday at noon. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great evening.